In this video we're going to be seeing what I use for my pop-up studio setup. Join me. Roll credits. Hi YouTube, Brian James at Micro Four Thirds Guy with you here once again, and really good to see you online again. I've been asked a few times by people in the comments, and also I've had a few personal emails asking me about my pop-up studio setup. Now, as you know, I've done a lot of high volume photography, schools and cadet forces and things like that in the past, and a lot of headshots when we're going into corporate situations. And to have something which you can take into somewhere, set up very easily and very quickly and get really good results is paramount. And it's a straightforward, simple setup, but it's got to be quite a flexible setup. So what I've done today is I've got together what I consider to be my normal pop-up studio setup, and which will take me through all the things in case I get any problems that I'm not aware of. Now this will change, I better tell you that, depends on what sort of shoot I'm going in for. If I know I'm doing certain types of headshots or certain type of portraits, I'll take specific equipment along for that one. But this is going to cover the general parts of the kit. Now I'm not going to cover cameras today. I can cover the cameras straightforward in another video. But suffice to say that whatever I have in my camera bag, I have two of. I always have a fallback to make sure that I've got safety measures. If I have a prime lens of a certain size, I'll make sure that I have a zoom lens which covers that area as well. If I have one camera body, I'll take a spare camera body. I always make sure that I have spare formatted memory cards, and 2 memory cards in each. And I'll tell you a little bit about those as we go on. But let's have a look at the basic setup that I have, and I'll explain what I'm doing as I get the bits and pieces out. So this is pretty much my everything in the kitchen sink setup. Basically what I have here, if I'm going to be going out and doing a shoot, then as I said a few minutes ago, I really want to make sure that I'm prepared for everything on it. So if I'm going out to do a shoot which I haven't got the full details on, I try and get as many of the details as I can. If I'm going out and do a shoot where there's various different types of shoot, if it's a particularly artistic shoot, if it's a shoot where I don't know what the lighting conditions are likely to be, I tend to take a lot of things along. If I'm going to be doing something like a school shoot or a high volume shoot, first of all I'll probably be using full studio strobes rather than the Speedlights. This is my Speedlight setup, and this is the one that I would take into if I was just doing a quick run and gun sort of setup. If you're going in to do corporate headshots and corporate portrait shots, quite often they don't want you hanging around for a while. They want you to get in, get set up, get photographs taken, and then get out again and just get on with the job. They're too busy for you to be faffing around. So the idea of using studio strobes, while very good because they're powerful and very, very controllable, often are overkill. So this setup is my Speedlight setup, and I'll take you through it in a few moments. But what we have in here is various modifiers which are in that box and bits and pieces. Stands, there's a couple of stands missing. One is missing because I've got the light which I'm doing a video on. There's also a shoot through umbrella which I'm using on there, which you'll just have to take for my word for the fact that I'm using it for this shoot. This bag, actually, people talk an awful lot about having fancy photo equipment. This is a great bag. This came from one of those pop-up display stands, you know, the sort of pop-up, and they've got a pole up the back which you can which they use for advertising. Invariably the springs in those go, or the display tears, and you're left with, well, a bag to throw away. These are wonderful for putting stands in. So I'm going to take some of the bits and pieces away. We'll come back and we'll go through each of these boxes and what I have in them and what I use them for. So this is the first box, and before I even open the box I'm going to show you these. These are just a couple of little bits of fiberboard which you can get from any craft shop. Black in colour, very, very light, weigh nothing at all, and they're great though because these work extremely good as flags. Because one of the things I like to do when I'm shaping light is not just put a straight light on, but I like to be able to shape the darkness as well. And these are great for just clamping on the side of a light stand beside a light just to stop spill. Wonderful, worth having in your bag, cost next to nothing. In the box here I've got a few things. First of all, a grayscale come white balance card. This one's getting a little bit old, we've got a bit of browning in there, but basically on this white balance, it's wonderful for making sure that you've got a white balance to set everything to, a known datum point. And again, the grayscale on the other side, really useful. You can just get your first model to hold this in front of them, flip it over, take another photograph, and then you don't need to worry too much. Now when I'm shooting on this, I usually leave the camera set to flash on the white balance. I don't worry about messing around with the exact white balance on this. I usually leave it just to flash, and I find that's usually good enough for what I'm after, but that gives me a little bit of fine tuning afterwards. Do not leave it on auto though. If you leave it on auto, you're going to get all sorts of problems coming in because the light conditions can change. Next thing I have, I'm not going to take it out, but it's basically a straightforward 5-in-1 reflector. This is great because if you want to get a little bit of fill-in light underneath chins or underneath eyes or something, put this underneath. You can just put it underneath there. And I've got a stand which I'll show you shortly, which is for this. Now this is quite a big one. I do also use a couple of smaller single two-sided ones, which are 2-in-1 from Light. They're fantastic. I really like Light products. I'm not sponsored by them in any way. I just find them really, really reliable, good stuff. What else do I have in here? Well, because I'm using Speedlights, I found these little Speedlight adapters absolutely fantastic. They go on, they give you a Bowen's S-mount type of brackets. I can use normal light modifiers on this, along with my Speedlights in the centre. Comes through in the centre just as a studio strobe would, and excellent. Complete with a really good light stand mount on it. I've got a couple of these and I use these all the time. They're absolutely fantastic. You can also, of course, use this just to hold your Speedlights onto a stand, even if you're not using a modifier on, of course. Next up, a couple of reflectors. I tend not to use these too much because I'm usually using some sort of modifier, but what I tend to use these for is I have some barn doors which go on, and this gives me, again, a Bowen's S mount for barn doors. And if I'm using something for highlighting, for rear highlighting, I find these are really good because I don't usually carry a snoot, but I can use the barn doors really closed down, and that gives me a really nice narrow piece of light. A couple of those. I usually don't need a couple, but because the box is here and it's a good storage, they tend to stay out in the one place. These little things, I found these on eBay a while ago. These are lighting stands and they are absolutely superb. Tiny little things, got a couple of these, and quite often if you're in a small area where you can't get set up easily, this is sort of set up by using someone's office or in someone's front living room, and quite often you can't put full stands out, but quite often they'll have a table or a sideboard or a bench or something like that. These sort of things are absolutely fantastic. They're quite stiff, unfortunately. There we are. But again, standard light on the top, light mount on the top. And I can put a strobe light on that really easy. Get a little bit of a motion on there, get a little bit of adjustment onto that. And again, just wonderful to have in the camera case. These have got me out of so many situations where you just don't have the space to be able to set proper lighting stands up. I always like a couple of clamps. These are great. A male and a female clamp for lighting stands. Again, these will go onto posts, and they're wonderful if you get stuck somewhere. They'll go onto flat surfaces such as a desk. Anything which will go between there and be clamped on. Again, not expensive, a few pounds on the likes of eBay, but can get you out of so many hazards when you're taking photographs. The last things I have in here are softboxes. I like these Godot softboxes, or Godot, I don't know how you pronounce them. I found these really well made, but reasonably inexpensive. And again, I have a standard setup in this, the softbox. They come with one of these clamps as well. These are pop-up square softbox, so they just pop out. I've got a diffuser in front of, diffuser screen in front of them. But I also make sure that I always keep, that's the inner screen, always keep a grid there. Grid's absolutely fantastic if you want to be able to play with your light and just direct it a little bit more controlled. Absolutely superb. Not very expensive, these things, about £40 UK, probably a similar sort of price in dollars. And I believe that Godot also go under the name of Niwa and a few other names. So all the same basic things, depending on which market you're in. Whichever one they are, these have had so much use. I've got a pair of them in here. I don't need two of these most of the time, one's usually ample, but it gives me flexibility and it's not that heavy to carry. All that's just, again, just packing up. Packing up is just as important as setting up for me because, again, if you're going into someone's office and they want to get on to work, it's all very well you wanting to do all the fancy arty stuff. They want to get on with their business. So again, for me, the speed of being able to pack something up really is essential. Sometimes the hardest thing is putting everything back into the bags. So there is the first box. Now stands can be the biggest nightmare if you allow them to be, or they can be a real saviour. If I'm doing something with studio strobes, invariably I'll take a C stand with me. Although they're big, cumbersome and heavy, they're incredibly safe. And when you've got something the weight of a studio strobe, especially with a modifier on, especially when you've got vulnerable people like youngsters in your shot, then having a good secure stand is essential. And a sandbag to put over the legs to weight them down. However, if I'm doing a pop-up studio, they're not really practical. I'm using strobes so the weight is light. Of course, you still have to be aware that if you're using modifiers on them, those modifiers have a tilting effect. So I tend to use these sort of things. Straightforward lighting stands, reasonably inexpensive, about 15 to 30 pounds each. You get various quality in them, but effectively they all do the same job. There's one holding up the light there, adjustable, just come up and put the stands on. I did say about this bag though, and let's have a look in this bag. I'll just pull the camera down a bit. So this is a bag, as I say, I just discovered lying around because it had been used for one of those pop-up displays. So in here I have various things. I have another one of those for the strobes. This I found is really easy. If I'm trying to put, to use a reflector underneath someone's face, if I'm on my own I don't have anyone to hold a reflector, and quite often the subject can't hold it either. This goes on top of a normal lighting stand, clamps onto the lighting stand there, and it's got a telescopic arm which you can put a reflector onto and adjust it to wherever you want it to be. Very straightforward, holds it with the position you want, ideal for putting underneath people's chins and underneath people's faces, and it gives you an extra pair of hands which are really useful. Inside this bag as well, another set of stands another set of telescopic stands. Usually I'll take 3 of these along. The reason I take 3 is that I usually want one for my main light, one for a highlight at the back, and another one for the reflector as well. Also, I usually have a stand which is being used at the moment which holds up the pop-up display at the background. You'll see this background, that's a Elastiline background. I'll tell you about backgrounds in a few minutes. Also in the bag, umbrellas. I love umbrellas. I prefer using these to softboxes most of the time. You can't see at the moment, but there's a straightforward shoot-through umbrella. It's about a 36-inch shoot-through umbrella that I use. I find those absolutely fantastic. I say about things being cheap as chips. Shoot-through umbrellas really are as cheap as chips because you can get them from about £5 or £6. The other one I tend to use a lot is a silver reflector. Silver reflector can really give quite an intense light. It can be a little bit difficult to control at times if you're not careful, purely for the fact that it does give such harsh reflections, but it can really give some highlights to features. I find these great, a little bit more expensive than the shoot-through umbrella, maybe £10. You don't need an expensive one, you will break them. It's as simple as that, they will break. Kids, if you have them anywhere in the environment where the kids are, they'll bend them, they'll stand them. If you have anywhere outside and you're shooting, I can guarantee the wind will catch them and blow them over and you will lose the umbrella. But don't worry about it too much, they're cheap. So, the umbrellas will all fit in there, the lighting stands. And I've still got loads and loads of room in there for the stand that I'm using, the other shoot-through umbrella, and any other sort of long accessories I want to take as well, and the stand for the background. Again, very, very fast to pack up, very, very fast to deploy. And in a corporate environment, as I say, that's just what you want. You don't want to be messing around too much because you're just going to get in the way and you'll get yourself a bad name with the client. You want to be able to get rework in the future. So that stands. Now we come on to the fun bit. The strobes. Now on this, I've got, again, I like buying things which are useful, not necessarily photography useful, but useful full stop. These I got from a local hardware store. They're really good, strong case. They're stackable, they've got side handles on, so if you wanted to get a couple of them, you can even have trolleys with them on, with wheels, all sorts of things. There's various makes, see which one you want of the lot, but these I find great for me. So in here I've got my 2 main things. I've got strobe lights and I've got my triggers. I also have a few little things. They are fantastic. This is a little set of cards, grayscale, black and white. And again, if you just want to check your lighting quickly, keep these in your pocket around your neck. Absolutely superb. The other thing I use are these little spring clips. absolutely fantastic. Again, if you're using black flags, or if you're using some sort of cloth background, half a dozen of those in your box, really, really worth having. For strobes, I haven't gone for the, I always shoot manual. I better tell you that, I always shoot manual strobes. I've done it since day one. I don't particularly like using TTL. I like using manual strobes because it gives me consistency what I'm doing. I know fine well if it's set and it stays where it's set, then I'm going to get a consistent light out of it. Again, I don't see the point of buying expensive. You can spend £500 or £600 on a single strobe light if you're buying the main manufacturers. I've used these young Nuos. Now I know a lot of people are using other lights systems as well. They've got and things like that with them. I haven't got preferences on that. I just know that these are about £50–60 each, fully manual flash, absolutely superb for what I want. They've got enough power. They're a 60 rating on this. Just take normal batteries in. I can get a good couple of shoots out of this. And the thing is as well, with the inexpensive part of them, if I do drop one, if I do break it, if I do knock the lighting stand over, it's not breaking the bank. I can get another one. I don't like to break them, but if I do, I can get another one. Again, in these kits, there's always the little foot stand. This one hasn't even been opened, but the foot stand to put the flash on, that if you don't have a light stand, you can put it off to one side. I rarely ever shoot on camera flash. So most of my flash, even if I'm just doing the camera and a single flash unit, a single strobe, I will tend to be doing off camera. This is again great for just putting onto a desk or a table beside it. Recycle time on these is nice and quick. And again, if you're not using full power all the time, which generally you don't if you're getting your setup right, then these will last for a long time and recycle at quite a rapid rate, so you can get multiple shots out in there. Very, very good. Again, to say that I'm using one of these, it's straightforward, pop it in, clamp it down on top of the stand, and you've now got a Bowen's S-mount flashlight. Absolutely fantastic. So they're really good. Again, on these lights as well, you can do things like change the angle of the view depending on which lens you're using. But I tend to keep them fairly wide because I'm quite often shooting through a modifier and I wanted to actually fill the whole of the modifier. So that again, these also have a flash radio receiver in, and if you use young Neo receivers, or again if you use the radio system paired up with the flashes that you use, if you get a flash with a receiver in, you don't need to put this onto a receiver, it's got it built in. If I'm using that, I use the matching transmitter which goes on top of the camera. This, I use Micro Four Thirds, so I'm shooting Lumix and Olympus. With the young Nuo, they don't do one specific to that, but if you use the Canon ones, I always switch the camera and this off before physically putting them together though. But the Canon ones I use, I've never tried the Nikon. I've been told the Nikon doesn't work with the Micro Four Thirds, but these will act as a manual flash, again, so it'll just literally trigger. But what I can do on this is I can have my flash in various groups and various channels, and on this I can actually change power and change the zoom setting on the flashes from the camera, so I don't have to keep on going up to the light to change it. They're all available on there. Very, very useful, very, very good. If I don't want to do it that way, if I just want a straightforward transmitter, there's all these sort of young Nuo, the RF605s. These are absolutely superb little bits of kit. Again, cheap. A pair of those, £25, something like that. And they work fantastic for the triggers as both transmitters and receivers. I always have as well a flash meter. The flash meter that I use are these Sekonic 305, is it? It's a 305, I think it is. 340. The Sekonic ones are great. They give you, it's a flash meter, you can just put it in front of your subject, take a flash reading, and what it does, it doesn't necessarily give me exactly what I want it to do each time, but what it does is it gives me a good starting point where I can just adjust it from there. It can save a huge amount of time. If you're going into a corporate setting or a school setting and you want to be able to get the photographs very, very quickly, get in, get out, then again, this will tell you exactly where your levels are. You can adjust your camera and your flash levels to suit very quickly without all the messing about and without having to have other people there, because you can even trigger it from on the flashes, on the flash itself. So that's the flash. As I say, I always have things like spare batteries, and there's too much in here. There really is too much in here, but I always work on the thing, it's better to be safe than sorry. The other thing I always have as a fallback is this. This is the little flash which comes with the Olympus. Now this is the one for the OMD EM1, not the Mark II. The Mark II's in the box still. By putting this on, if you find your radio receivers and transmitters fail for any reason, most flash guns will have a light sensor so that they will sense a flash and then trigger themselves off that flash, an optical trigger. This is wonderful. On the camera, you can turn the camera power down on this so that it's just putting out a little bit of light, so it's not bothering your main shot. But what this will do, get you out of a hole. It will get it so that you can actually trigger your flash, your strobe lights, even if your wireless system goes down. I haven't had to do that for a long, long time, but it was a lesson hard learned when I had it. So there we are. That's what we have for the equipment. Basically nothing else. As I say, there's a shoot-through umbrella, which is on the light. Now the other thing which I haven't mentioned up to now is the background. I tend to like using these pop-up backgrounds, the spring-loaded one. They're like the spring-loaded tents that you can get, which just fold down into a neat circle like you can see there, but pop out into a 1.5 by 2 meter background. You can get all sorts of colours, you can get all sorts of patterns on them. I tend to like the mottled patterns quite a lot, but you can also get them white and black, and also of course you can get the green and the blue screen if you're doing any sort of chroma key photography. Costs can go anything from about £35 up to £150, £160 depending on what you get. The ones I tend to use tend to be fairly expensive, but they are colour fast, which means if they do get any sort of damp on them, they keep the colour and they don't start running, and they tend to be really good. But again, have a look, you can get from various sources, and they are really, really neat and easy. And as I say, I've got a stand, another tripod stand, which is specific to this, and it's holding that display up the back, clips onto the top of it, and it makes a free standalone stand. Or of course you can just prop it up against the wall. So there we are, that's the equipment that I tend to use. It's straightforward, it's simple, and as I say, there's too much there for what I would normally take. If I was doing a straightforward setup for a school shot or a cadet shot where I'm straight on, I'll use very flat lighting. I tend to have a shoot-through umbrella straight above and behind the camera, and that will give me a very flat light on the front. It's ideal. It doesn't matter which way the head's pointed, you're going to get a good shot out of it. It doesn't give wonderful shadowy detail, doesn't give you artistic detail, but it's ideal for doing those sort of shots. I have actually found out if you try getting too arty a lot of the time with parents and guardians of children especially, they tend not to like them so much. So I found that if you're just going to do a straightforward headshot, it's almost like a passport shot. Shoot through umbrella, straight behind the camera, slightly above, just shooting down, absolutely fantastic. Now at the moment I've got my shoot through umbrella with my studio light just to my left hand side, and again you'll find there's a little bit of shadowing on here, but you can play around with these sort of things, and by taking 2 or 3 strobes you've got safety there if anything happens, because invariably what happens is you go out and something will not work. It's probably working fine, but you've got a little setting that you've knocked off, and the stress becomes incredible. You start getting all fidgety, you can't really remember, you can't work out what's happening, on why it's not working, things like that. So the more security you can build in, the easier you can make it on yourself, the better. Now I said before as well that I wasn't going to talk about cameras. My basic premise is I take 2 of everything. Now by and large on these shoots I tend to shoot primes, because most of it are shots similar to this, head and shoulders or close crop portrait. I might do down to waist level, but I find that a 45mm prime on a Micro Four Thirds camera is ideal. When I was shooting with my full frame, I used to shoot 85mm, which was just perfect for me for most of it. The other lens I'll take along is my 60mm lens, and both of which I tend to, although they're reasonably fast, I don't go for the super fast lenses. I do find that most of the stuff I'm shooting around about f4 maybe, 2.8 at the very most open, but usually about f4 just to get the depth of field so that the face is properly in. I also will take a zoom. I usually take my 12 to 40 Olympus zoom with me, because that gives me a good coverage of what I need to do. It takes me up to a full frame equivalent of 80mm, but that's usually good for doing what I needed to do on there, and it's a good fallback. Generally though, 2 cameras, 2 batteries per camera, my OMD EM1 Mark II and my Lumix G9 cameras. So I always have 2 batteries for the Olympus, 2 batteries for the Lumix. I always have 2 newly formatted cards in the camera in each slot. So that's 4 memory cards which have been fully formatted before I go out for a shoot. And I also have 4 spare cards as well, 4 fully formatted spare cards. And I also make sure that if they're formatted on the Olympus, they keep separate from the ones on the Lumix. I format them on the individual cameras themselves. I find that really useful. One thing I tend not to take is a tripod. I find tripods to be a pain. I'll usually throw it in the back of the car, but rarely take it in with me. Tripods are wonderful if I'm doing a group shot. If I'm doing a group shot, then I'll use a wide angle lens, and that's usually outdoors, sometimes indoors, but usually outdoors. And a tripod is fantastic because you can set the camera up where you want it, you can get the field of view that you want, and you can go out and arrange people on there. If I'm taking shots on a portrait, I rarely ever use a tripod though. I find that people move around too much, and when you're this close in, even the smallest movement, as you can see on this, takes you way off centre, or way off the line that you wanted to be on. So tripods sit in the car, but I tend not to take them in. Other than that, that's probably the whole setup. If I was just to be doing a school shot, as I say, I would not be taking the softboxes along, I wouldn't be taking the barn doors along with me. I would have probably, although always remember, when I say take this, I always have a spare. So I would be taking a shoot-through umbrella and two lighting stands and also a reflector. I find the reflector on those is particularly useful for filming underneath the nose, underneath the chin, and stopping some of the bagginess of the eyes as well. And so that's my usual setup. Put the reflector just in front, use the reflected light from the light behind, and that usually is enough for me. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please don't forget to subscribe. I think it's that one. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button below and give me a big thumbs up, which helps YouTube's algorithm spread this video further. And if you have gained anything from this, then please feel free to use a PayPal link below to buy me a coffee to help support the channel. It really is appreciated. So until the next time, don't forget to keep on taking your camera out with you. Keep taking photographs and enjoy your photography. Till the next time, bye-bye.